incident and not a random attack. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley will give a speech today on the state of the presidential race. She is set to deliver remarks in Greenville, South Carolina at noon Eastern Time. The speech comes days just before the former South Carolina governor is set to go head-to-head with former President Trump in her home state's GOP primary. And that's the latest. I'm Ray Harris on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Wendy's Breakfast 2 for $3 Biggie Bundles lets you choose your perfect duo from your fave 4, like a sausage or egg and cheese biscuit, small seasoned potatoes, or medium hot coffee. Limited time only during breakfast hours. U.S. price and participation may vary. Not valid in the combo. Single item at regular price.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Lakers legends Michael Cooper and Jerry West are among 14 finalists for the class of 2024 Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Cooper helped the Lakers win 5 NBA championships. He also was an 8-time selection on the NBA's all-defensive team. This is the second time West is getting Hall of Fame consideration. He was inducted as a player in 1980. This one is for his work as an executive with the Lakers, Memphis Grizzlies, Golden State Warriors, and the Clippers. West is still working for the Clippers as a consultant. The inductees will be announced April 6th during the NCAA Final Four in Phoenix. Clippers coach Ty Lue was fined $35,000 by the NBA for criticizing the refs after the Clippers beat Golden State on February 14th. Lue was ejected from the game early in the fourth quarter after getting 2 technicals. Lue was one of only 5 NBA coaches that had not received a tech all season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte with the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial. In a public opinion survey commissioned by KBLA Talk 1580 and conducted by Viteris, the black voters surveyed were highly enthusiastic about the March 2024 primary. The race for Los Angeles district attorneys being hotly contested. Incumbent DA George Gascon's efforts to implement progressive criminal justice reforms have generated pushback from within his own office, the broader law enforcement community, and some in the general public. He was the subject of at least 2 failed attempts to qualify recalls. The concerns about crime are reflected in the polling results of black voters. Nearly 1 in 4 have been victims of violent crime or have someone close to them who has been a victim. 1 in 5 black voters have personally been victims of property crime in the last 2 years. A majority of respondents feel less safe than they did a year or 2 ago, but they reject the notion that criminal justice reform has gone too far. This year, black voters will be looking for candidates who speak to the complexity of the issues as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. Nearly half of black voters have an unfavorable view of DA Gascon, but his challengers are largely unknown. Nearly half of the black voters are also undecided, which means there's a clear opportunity for candidates to connect with black voters. Our poll makes 3 things abundantly clear. Black voters matter. Black voters are closely following this race, and the candidates for DA have a lot of work to do. KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to the mobilization and use of the franchise to empower our audience to identify and pursue their interests in advancing equity, inclusive representation, and multiracial solidarity. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. We welcome your feedback.
I'm Tavis Smiley. I'm thrilled to have you join us today on our program. What an amazing first hour with Michael Lomax, Dr. Michael Lomax, who was in studio celebrating the 80th anniversary of the United Negro College Fund. They just received a $100 million gift from the Lilly Foundation, and they've raised now $1 billion just in the last 5 years. So the UNCF is going strong, even as the Supreme Court and others are turning their way against or from corrective programs like affirmative action, diversity, equity, and inclusion. UNCF still doing what it does so well. We congratulate them on their 80th anniversary and 20 years as president and CEO for Dr. Michael Lomax, and what a great conversation. I am delighted in this hour to have my friend and brother Jesse Jackson Jr., former congressman, and James Zogby, who we all know from his brilliant polling work, say nothing of his work on the Jackson campaign 40 years ago. Hard to believe it has now been 40 years since the iconic ascent of Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. And that amazing speech. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was just 2 years out of high school. I was a sophomore at Indiana University, and remember it like it was yesterday, watching Jesse Jackson step to that podium at the Democratic National Convention in San Francisco, California. And I want to play, I'll jump in at the appropriate time, but just to give you a sense of the artistic genius and the brilliance, the eloquence, not articulate. I hate when white folk call us articulate. The eloquence of one Jesse Jackson. Just listen for a second. Sit back and hear Jesse Jackson in 1984, 40 years ago, at the Democratic National Convention.
Tonight, we come together bound by our faith in a mighty God, with genuine respect and love for our country, and inheriting the legacy of a great party, the Democratic Party, which is the best hope for redirecting our nation on a more humane, just, and peaceful course. This is not a perfect party. We are not a perfect people, yet we are called to a perfect mission. Our mission: to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to house the homeless, to teach the illiterate, to provide jobs for the jobless, and to choose the human race over the nuclear race. We are gathered here this week to nominate a candidate and adopt a platform which will expand, unify, direct, and inspire our party and the nation to fulfill this mission. My constituency is the desperate, the damned, the disinherited, the disrespected, and the despised. They are restless and seek relief. They have voted in record numbers. They have invested the faith, hope, and trust that they have in us. The Democratic Party must send them a signal that we care. I pledge my best not to let them down. There is the call of conscience, redemption, expansion, healing, and unity. Leadership must heed the call of conscience, redemption, expansion, healing, and unity, for they are the key to achieving our mission. Time is neutral and does not change things. With courage and initiative, leaders change things. No generation can choose the age or circumstance in which it is born, but through leadership, it can choose to make the age in which it is born an age of enlightenment, an age of jobs and peace and justice. Only leadership, that intangible combination of gifts, discipline, information, circumstance, courage, timing, will, and divine inspiration, can lead us out of the crisis in which we find ourselves.
Just a little taste of Jesse Jackson. 40 years ago, the Democratic National Convention here in the state of California, specifically the city of San Francisco. Hard to believe 4 decades have passed since he stepped to that podium. That was 84. Of course, he came back again in 88, but we are celebrating for the rest of this hour 40 years of this iconic moment with Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. We are joined in a moment by his son, former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., and his deputy campaign manager, James Zogby. I look forward to this dialogue when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
City of Los Angeles tenants, get informed today about your eviction rights. Take immediate action if you receive an eviction notice from the court. You have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice or unlawful detainer. Don't self-evict. And you can't be evicted for non-payment of rent unless you owe more than the fair market rent for a unit your size. Learn more eviction information such as at-fault and no-fault evictions at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm-fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties: classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
It's game day at Jim's house, and the spread is impressive.
Mike's already done some damage with the hot wings, and now he's dropping back and going deep for another slice of pizza.
I sure hope he brought the Pepto.
Mike knows the Pepto-Bismol provides fast 5-symptom relief from unexpected stomach upsets. He's no rookie.
The way he's throwing back those nachos, he's the GOAT.
Be ready for game day with Pepto-Bismol.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
I'm ready for this conversation with Jesse Jackson Jr., former Congressman, and James Zogby, the brilliant pollster, James Zogby, who was deputy campaign manager for Jesse Jackson 40 years ago. It was indeed 40 years ago on this day. The Reverend Jesse Jackson competed in the Iowa caucus, his first of many contests for president. He would go on to win Alabama and Louisiana and place third in the Democratic primary with 18% of the national vote behind the nominee, Walter Mondale and Gary Hart. I discussed earlier with Michael Lomax in the first hour, and I do it all the time. I never, ever miss an opportunity to remind people there is no Barack Obama if there is no Jesse Jackson who forced a change in proportional voting. We'll talk about that in this hour. But first, some breaking news, and I'm going to put my friend Jesse Jackson Jr. on the spot to get his take on this. I'm sure he has a take on it, as I do. I'm sure Zogby does as well. But it's big news. For the third time, this just out, for the third time, the United States used its veto on the Security Council to kill a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. Washington has proposed, and we say Washington, we really mean the Biden administration, has proposed an alternative asking for a halt in fighting as soon as practicable. That's their language, a halt in the fighting as soon as practicable. Jesse Jackson Jr., former Congressman, your father, has wrestled with this issue for decades. Here we are all these years later, still wrestling with this. What's your take on the U.S. now for the third time vetoing a Security Council resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire, my friend?
It's outrageous. And first, I want to thank you for having me on your program. So honored to be back with you, my brother Tavis, and so grateful to share this space with Jim Zogby. I'm so very grateful for that. Here's the great challenge as we reflect upon Jesse Jackson 40 years. There seems to be a lack of courage on the Democratic side of the aisle and progressives amongst many Americans generally to understand the nature of the devastation that is being wreaked upon the people of the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian people. And there's just no justification for the sheer amount of civilians in the name of down Hamas that can be justified in the minds of any reasonable person. And so it's not just a difficult day for the United States in terms of our moral authority at the United Nations before the entire world. We're all watching it every day. We all want something to happen. Not only is it a moral disgrace, which Reverend Jackson said in 1984, it's also a political disgrace because as we reflect upon the lack of courage to stand up, it could very well cost Joe Biden the state of Michigan. It's certainly costing him amongst young voters in every state in the union at a time when democracy itself is being jeopardized. Dr. King probably said it best. We are global citizens, and we don't get to shirk the responsibility that we have as Americans. Those are our bombs that are raining on those children and those women and those families. That's our weaponry and our tax dollars that are devastating the Gaza Strip. It is our annual aid to Israel that has been unabated since the Balfour Agreement in 1948. It's the infrastructure that we have provided the Israeli state that is allowing them to do this, and I find it personally very offensive and unacceptable.
Put him on the spot, but he, as always, comes through with a powerful discourse on this Israel-Hamas situation in the U.S. again today for the third time, using its veto vote for a UN Security Council resolution for an immediate ceasefire, calling instead for a different proposal to have a ceasefire as soon as practicable. I don't know what that means, but I'll leave that where it is for the moment. One other follow-up on that, Jesse Jackson Jr., and then we'll move forward. What do you make, then, of the Biden administration's tone deafness on this issue?
It will show up in next November. Very likely to show up at the Democratic convention in Chicago. They are expecting, the Democrats themselves are expecting at least 200,000 protesters to descend upon Chicago between the 18th and the 22nd in the city of Chicago. President Frederick Douglass Haynes, the president of the Rainbow Coalition, along with Reverend Al Sharpton and other civil rights organizations, are in the early planning stages of hosting a conference at the same time, not to interfere with the Democratic Convention. They meet between 5 and 10 o'clock. But we're hoping that James Zogby and other peace activists at the same time will find their way to a conference on the disinherited to discuss and to take advantage of the national media that will descend upon Chicago, that we might impact the party's platform in just a few months by bringing tens of thousands of people to the city of Chicago who are very concerned about the tone deafness.
James Zogby, don't want to put you on the spot. Anything you'd like to add to that? If not, I'm ready to talk about the campaign 40 years ago, sir.
Well, just a couple things, Tavis, in the beginning. And that is, I was a deputy campaign manager. There were a number of us. I got promoted by you and others, but I was just a lowly deputy. And the other is, my brother is the domestic pollster. My polling is all in the Middle East. And so it's John who is the guy who made a brand out of the family name. But I want to just share with you, we had a summit in Chicago back in January with Reverend Jackson, with the Operation Push, my organization, the Arab American Institute, Fellowship of Reconciliation, and a number of other organizations. And we brought together leaders, interfaith leaders across the country, and we had a proposal for ceasefire, humanitarian aid, and conditioning aid. It reverberated, and we saw the impact in Chicago with the city council passing the resolution. But aside from all that, I had a chance to speak with Reverend a few times during the weekend. You know, he has difficulty sometimes with the Parkinson's. But I'll never forget, as I was leaving, I had to rush out to get a plane home. I just stopped by and I said, Reverend, I'm going. And he just looked at me and he said, remember, the babies are dying every day. And I never forgot that, obviously, and I don't think I ever will forget it, because it shows the extent to which this is on his mind still. And remember, the babies are dying every day.
Yeah.
And they are. And so when the U.S. says this is not the time for this resolution, when the hell is the time? When is the time? 29,000 people dead, and it's not the time? Are we going to wait? What was their magic number, like 40,000, 50,000? At what point do we say enough is enough? This is only taking lives and accomplishing nothing other than killing innocent people.
Yep. This story has legs, obviously, and it'll be developing today and in the days ahead. But in case you just tuned in, for the third time, the U.S. has used its veto power to reject a UN Security Council resolution, killing that resolution, in fact, demanding an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. The Biden administration has proposed an alternative, asking for a halt in fighting, quote, as soon as practicable, close quote. You heard James Zogby say a moment ago, who knows what practicable means? How many have to die before they call for the ceasefire? We digress on that for the moment. Again, that story is developing. So, James Zogby, I take your point that many of us have given you a promotion. You should just take it. Just take promotion, man. Take it. Don't turn it away.
I got it.
Okay. But take me back inside. We'll get Jesse Jackson Jr.'s thoughts, of course, as we move through this hour. But take me back to what you recall 40 years ago.
Two things. One is we're at a dinner. I had invited Reverend to speak. He leaned over when I was sitting at the table, leaned over and he said, I want you to join my campaign. And I said, but Reverend, I've been organizing my community for the last 4 years. I don't know if I can give it up. And he said to me, we'll do more for your community in the next 4 months than you've been able to do in the last 4 years. And he was absolutely right. The excitement, the energy that it created among Arab Americans, as I saw people of every stripe in the rainbow get energized by this campaign, it was a miracle. It was people who had not felt included in politics, had not felt energized by politics, didn't have hope, didn't have a dream of a better future, being energized by this man and his vision and his voice. And it had a lasting impact, not only on my community. I mean, our organization, the Arab American Institute, grew out of that campaign. First time we'd ever been involved in a presidential campaign. Candidates had given money back to us, rejected our endorsement, didn't want to have the touch of an Arab involved in their effort. We were, all of a sudden, the door opened, and it was Jesse Jackson who did it. The other thing I remember, it happened years later. I was involved also in '88, and it was great. We obviously did so much more that year. But there's a public golf course here in the heart of the district, Rock Creek Park, and a lot of the old postal workers go and hang out in the afternoons after they're done their work. And I was there with my son. He was, I think, freshman in high school. And we were on the putting green. Old guy comes up to me, and he looks at me, and he says, "You're Zogby, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Jackson, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "84, the pure one." And it was the way he said that, 84, the pure one, it made me think that actually what 84 was. We didn't have big aspirations for winning. There was a sense that we were changing the dynamic of politics. There was a sort of a purity of spirit of the way we went about doing it. And the energy we created, the hope we generated. I mean, I looked standing behind Reverend and looking in the face of people, hearing him talk. I remember one time he turned to me and he said, what do they expect from me? Because they were passing their babies up for him to just touch. You know, he sort of reached people in a way that they had not been reached in a long time. And they felt that need, and he actually turned history around in a very significant way in '84.
Yeah.
In '84.
Yeah. Jesse Jackson Jr., I'm honored to have you on this program as always. I want to ask a little bit later here to James's point. Your father did not win in '84, but what did he accomplish? We'll talk about what he did get done, the coattails, the political coattails, all that came out of that later in this hour. But I want to start in the few minutes I have here before we come forward with just your remembrances of being on the stage, being in San Francisco. What do you recall from that night in '84?
It was extremely powerful. He began the process of raising the hopes and expectations of an entirely different generation, a new generation of Americans, like John F. Kennedy spoke about in his inaugural address in 1960. And so, standing on that stage, I, in my own way, resolved that I could too serve my country, either in Congress, the United States Senate, or the presidency of the United States. And an entire generation of young African-American progressive candidates, Arab-American candidates, female candidates, campaign operatives, Mignon Moore, Donna Brazile, Leisha Green, Cleo Fields. When you think about the congresspersons who benefited from that campaign, Bobby Rush, Benny Thompson was a supervisor in the Jesse Jackson campaign, but most recently he was the head of the inquiry into the January 6th committee. All of these are Jesse Jackson people who were foot soldiers and foot organizers on the ground and eventually accomplished great things themselves.
Yeah. How do you, all these years later, how do you read those coattails? I said earlier in our first hour today, talking to Michael Lomax, that there is no Barack Obama without Jesse Jackson changing the rules. We'll get to that. But the point I'm making now, and want to get your take on, Jesse, is the coattails. There has been no person in the history of this country who has had stronger, longer political coattails than your father.
So I want to say this briefly because we're to a break, but when I compare the significance of the '84 campaign with what was really going on in the world, you have to kind of reflect on Martin Luther posting his 95 Theses on the church at Wittenberg in 1517. I mean, it just started Protestantism. People within the context of the church were able to protest, and protest movement, Protestantism, protest movement. It was something other than Catholicism. And all of us, many of us who are Christians today, owe our very faith and our activism to the idea that it is okay to nonviolently protest in the context of our religion. So when you think about the death of Dr. King in 1968, a presidential election year, you think about Nixon to Ford in 1972 in Watergate. You think about in 1976 Jimmy Carter, and then in 1980 Ronald Reagan with a peculiar form of meanness, welfare queen, suggesting African Americans were lazy, and a new conservative movement to downsize the federal government and return powers to the states. When Ronald Reagan as candidate Reagan showed up in my father's office in 1979, he sat down for 20 minutes outside of my father's office talking to my Uncle Saint. He thought my Uncle Saint was Reverend Jackson. And after Uncle Saint listened to him for 15 minutes, he said, hold on 1 minute. Let me go get Reverend Jackson. Let me go get Reverend Jackson. And he took Ronald Reagan. Y'all should Google that picture. Google it. He takes him into Reverend Jackson's office. He talks for another 45 minutes. And Reverend was so unimpressed with Reagan in 1980, he said to himself, I can be president myself. And by 1984, he was running.
On that note, when we come, that's why I love Jesse Jackson Jr. I love anybody with a great backstory. Ronald Reagan sitting in the hallway talking to the wrong person for 20 minutes, not knowing it was not Jesse Jackson. That reminds me of the story you recall, Jesse, when he was at a cabinet meeting and did not know who his own transportation secretary was. Ain't but one black person at the table, and he didn't know who his own transportation secretary was. I digress on that. And that was before he served 2 full terms, and then they told us he had Alzheimer's. I digressed on that point. A lot more to cover. Celebrating Jesse Jackson's iconic campaign 40 years ago with Jesse Jackson Jr. and James Zogby right now on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Ray Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Nearly all of California is under a flood watch after another atmospheric river is off the coast. The state is still saturated from the last powerful storm that swept in off the Pacific and dumped record amounts of rain in the area. The Weather Prediction Center has issued an excessive rain outlook for most of California through Wednesday. Dalton, Illinois Mayor Tiffany Henyard is on the defensive concerning criticism from trustees and the media who questioned her spending. The black mayor lashed out at a recent public meeting. WGN-TV reports Henyard's spending of government money, and the probe shows tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars spent on trips, meals, and more. And that's the latest. I'm Ray Harris on your home for 24/7 news, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Wendy's Breakfast 2 for $3 Biggie Bundles lets you choose your perfect duo from your fave four, like a sausage or egg and cheese biscuit, small seasoned potatoes, or medium hot coffee. Limited time only during breakfast hours. U.S. price and participation may vary. Not valid in the combo. Single item at regular price.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Lakers legends Michael Cooper and Jerry West are among 14 finalists for the class of 2024 Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Cooper helped the Lakers win 5 NBA championships. He also was an 8-time selection on the NBA's all-defensive team. This is the second time West is getting Hall of Fame consideration. He was inducted as a player in 1980. This one is for his work as an executive with the Lakers, Memphis Grizzlies, Golden State Warriors, and the Clippers. West is still working for the Clippers as a consultant. The inductees will be announced April 6th during the NCAA Final Four in Phoenix. Clippers coach Ty Lue was fined $35,000 by the NBA for criticizing the refs after the Clippers beat Golden State on February 14th. Lue was ejected from the game early in the fourth quarter after getting 2 technicals. Lue was one of only 5 NBA coaches that had not received a tech all season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I spray and scrub, but the soap scum in my bathtub is still there.
I spray and scrub, but the burnt sauce on my stovetop sticks around.
Sprays can leave grime behind, but new Mr. Clean Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser combines the scrubbing power of an eraser with the cleaning power of Dawn to melt away tough messes on contact.
Just wet, squeeze, and erase.
Stop spraying, start erasing, and clean with more magic than ever with new Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy. and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Meet Cheryl.
Hey.
She's on vacation and lost in the moment. Unfortunately, so is her Chase debit card.
It's gotta be somewhere.
Maybe she lost it at salsa night.
These skirts should have pockets.
Or maybe she lost it at Pilates.
3 and 2 and...
But she's not worried. With the Chase mobile app, she can lock her card till it turns up. Tools that help protect. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
More honesty than you can handle.
More empowerment than you can imagine.
You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. and James Zogby, who was a deputy campaign manager during Jesse Jackson's historic campaign 40 years ago. We are celebrating in this hour the 1984 ascent of Jesse, the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr., with his son and James Zogby. I'm, again, pleased to have him on this program. Jesse, you made this point earlier, and I want to come back to this and ask you to draw, to make a comparison and a contrast, if you will. So we all know, those of us who know political history know what happened in Chicago in 1968. We know the Fannie Lou Hamer story, the Dr. King, of course, is assassinated. It was a tumultuous year. So you got Bobby Kennedy killed, you got Dr. King assassinated, you've got the convention in Chicago. All hell broke loose at that convention in '68. I'm wondering if you might share more of your thoughts on then and now, of course, now being 2024, a few months from now, back in Chicago again in a very tumultuous period of American history.
I'm not so sure, Tavis, and I think you questioned that much has really changed in a real sense. And I say that because if you think about it, the only thing that's missing from the Martin Luther King Jr. narrative at age 39 is that he's 4 years older than the Constitution requires of him to run for president. He dies at 39 years old. He's assassinated. He's killed at 39 years old. But look at his mind. He's organizing a poor people's campaign. He's organizing workers in Memphis, Tennessee. He's marching with Rabbi Abraham Heschel. He's identifying with Nelson Mandela in South Africa and calling for the end of apartheid. I mean, Dr. King is really a global citizen in 1968 in ways that some of us were still fighting for the neighborhood and fighting with the Panthers and fighting for Black Power and fighting for something in our local schools. Dr. King was a Nobel laureate. And he saw the whole country, and he even wrote a speech that he never got a chance to deliver called America's Going to Hell. But I want to make this one point really, really clear. In 1968, it is American bombs that are being dropped on children and their families and their mothers in Vietnam. And Dr. King became immensely non-popular when he came out against the Vietnam War. In 2024, it is American bombs that are being dropped in the Gaza Strip. And we just vetoed a ceasefire for the third time. And for Joe Biden and the Democrats to think that there are not consequences for that in 2024 is just a misread of history. It's just outrageous because the pro-peace community is certainly not going to stand by and watch these innocent children in Palestine get bombed by the Democratic Party. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
It's a serious setup, James Zogby, for me to ask, and I will now. What then, given what Jesse Jackson Jr. has just laid out, do you expect to happen in Chicago this summer?
I don't think there's any way to avoid the fact that there will be problems for the Democratic Party establishment. There is a genuine upset. I know that there are plans for an alternative, a people's convention. I know groups around the country are mobilizing. I have been doing work on the Middle East for 50 years and have been startled by, back 40 years ago, we were in front of the White House, 50 people, and what you heard was a distinct Arabic accent to the people chanting. Today, it is as diverse a coalition that is reminiscent of from the Women's March to the Black Lives Matter March to the March for Our Lives, the gun rally, the anti-gun rallies. It is a spontaneous eruption of support, as Jesse noted, among young people, among people of color, and they are upset. Progressive Jews, not just the Arab Americans, but I mean, there are in many of these cities where people are shutting down the main streets or the bridges or the train stations. It's progressive Jews who are taking the lead on that. And this has touched a nerve in folks across the board that is quite striking. And I certainly won't dissipate in November. I'm sorry, in the summer. And I tell you, in the polling that we've done, the difference between attitudes toward Biden, toward his policy in Gaza, among voters 29 and under, and among non-white voters, it's night and day between them and older voters and white voters. And these are supposed to be the Democratic coalition, and they're going to lose them.
It's going to be hot, a hot summer in Chicago, and certainly when this convention jumps off. Jesse Jackson Jr., as you well know, well for that matter, we all know, Chicago is not just your hometown, not just the hometown of your father, Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It is also the hometown of one Barack Hussein Obama, who will no doubt be on stage in Chicago in the midst of all this drama happening in Chicago this summer. I took the opportunity to explain this to those listening in the first hour. I'll give you the opportunity to explain it in this hour. But for those who do not understand what I mean when I say there is no Barack Obama, if there is no Jesse Jackson changing the rules, take it away, sir.
Well, so there's no doubt about that. In 1984, Reverend Jackson campaigned in Iowa and New Hampshire and the remaining states. The Democratic Party had a system for selecting its delegate process, which included whoever won the state wins all of the delegates. In other words, it was a system that was designed to drive other candidates out of the race. If a city won or someone with big name recognition got out of Iowa, they went to New Hampshire with the wind at their back. They usually did well in New Hampshire, and then Democrats began dropping out of the campaign because they couldn't survive. The problem is, of course, that Iowa is very rural, it's very white, but it doesn't reflect the Democratic base, which is African American and Hispanic, Native American, Arab American, and Jewish, and women and young people. It is a very, very broad coalition. So if a woman runs in Iowa, historically, if an African American, Reverend Jackson being the most serious to run, by the time they get to their base to ask for votes, well, the game is over. So what Reverend Jackson insisted at the Democratic convention was every time he would come in second or third in a contest, he would have a press conference and says, now I got 500,000 votes last night, but where are my delegates? I got 600,000 votes last night, but I came in third, but where are my delegates? So by the time we got to the convention, the Democratic Party changed the rules. I believe in that first rule change with Chairman Jim Zogby and I were both appointed to the Democratic National Committee for the first time because they had to diversify and add delegates to the convention to reflect what Reverend Jackson had earned from voters that participated in the process. Some delegates had to give up their seats. Others had to change to reflect their support for Jesse Jackson. So by the time Barack Obama runs in 2006, 2008, what Barack Obama does not have to do is at the end of every state contest, he doesn't have to ask for his delegates because whatever percentage of votes that he got in Iowa, he got that percentage of delegates. He got them in New Hampshire. And Reverend Jackson also moved the South Carolina primary up to the third slot, which is how Joe Biden was elected. It's how Barack Obama's campaign was saved after Hillary's victory in New Hampshire. And so Reverend Jackson has changed the entire game by changing the rules of the Democratic Party.
And there you have it. There is no Barack Obama. There is no Jesse Jackson forcing that rule change. Had the rules been the same when Obama ran as they were when Jesse first ran, Hillary Clinton would have been the nominee. Obama never would have been the nominee, and you might not have had him as the first African-American president. I digress for now. As we celebrate the 40th anniversary of the iconic campaign of Reverend Jesse Jackson in 1984 with Jesse Jackson Jr. and James Zogby on Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
So sticky.
At Hannah's Organic Honey, business may be sweet, but they need an e-commerce queen bee to lead the hive.
Okay, these jars are going to Jakarta. Oh, wait a minute. Does that say Jackson?
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Schedule virtual interviews and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Jesse Jackson Jr. and James Zogby celebrating the 40th anniversary of Jesse Jackson's iconic 1984 presidential campaign. Jesse, right quick before I go back to James, the question that most annoyed me, I think you're probably laughing, I say this, Jesse, the question that most annoyed me in 84 and once again in 88 when your father ran was, and this was a headline in any number of publications, what does Jesse want? What does Jesse want? You remember that annoying question? What does Jesse want?
I remember it well, and I remember it on the cover of Time magazine.
Exactly. What in retrospect, what do you make of that question? As if you have to want something. I mean, of course, everybody who runs wants something, but the fact that the mainstream media, let's just call it what it is, the good white folk, frame that question, what does Jesse want, as if ... Take it away, Jesse.
I thought he made the agenda very clear. They were asking the question to divert from the message that Jesse Jackson said at the opening of your program. He represented the disinherited. He represented the damned, the despised, the rejected stones, and he believed ultimately that they could become the cornerstones of our democracy. Indeed, making our nation, encouraging our nation, forcing our nation to live up to the true meaning of its creed. He said, our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is rainbow. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white, we're all precious in God's sight. Rise together. We don't rise one group over and against the other. And he brought the likes of James Zogby and others to the national stage in a way that has profoundly impacted and really redefined who we are as Americans. They forced us to, Reverend Jackson forced us to think about it.
And what's your sense now, Jesse, of the state of the Democratic Party? We often talk about the disarray on the other side of the aisle and the MAGA forces. What's your sense quickly of the state of the Democratic Party?
We run a presidential campaign, not in all 50 states. We run it in about 8 to 10 states, trying to get to certain electoral votes, one of which is the state of Michigan, one of which is the state of Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, these so-called purple states. We have Illinois. We struggled somewhat in the Midwest with Michigan and Minnesota, and then we head to a couple of Western states. Any one of those states under the limited Democratic Party platform program, and we lose the presidency of the United States to the forces of Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Nikki Haley. And so when we talk about why we need peace in the Middle East, why we need a ceasefire right now, it's in large part not only because it's morally right, but there is a significant number of voters who are Arab American descent, Palestinian descent, who live in Michigan. And if we lose that state, the children and the families that we serve in Compton, on the south side of Chicago, and Gary, Indiana, and Atlanta, Georgia, and throughout our country where there are poor and working class people, all of them will lose when we lose a single state anywhere in the union, because Joe Biden and the Democratic Party no longer has its finger in the dike of a flood of meanness and mean-spiritedness that is likely to come from a second Trump term.
Remaining moments with Jesse Jackson Jr. and James Zogby, celebrating 40 years since Jesse Jackson Sr.'s iconic run for president in 1984. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive, unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park,
Los Angeles, California.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Jesse Jackson Jr. and James Zogby, who was a deputy campaign manager when Jesse ran in '84. James Zogby, I'm running out of time here. Your final thoughts on the legacy of Jesse Jackson's historic campaign in 1984.
I wouldn't go forward to Barack Obama. I would go forward 2 years. Democrats won the Senate back, and it was largely the increase in black voter registration and black voter mobilization that did it. We won 5 southern states. It was Jesse that did it. Doug Wilder became first black governor of Virginia. Dave Dinkins was a mayor in New York City. This was all Jesse. And so what Jesse wants, he wanted fairness. He wanted to lift up his people and other people who'd been disenfranchised, and he did it. And it was the lasting legacy of his campaign that transformed the structure of the Democratic Party and had impact almost immediately by stopping Reagan in his tracks, by giving Democrats decisive control of the Senate, which they had not had before he ran in '84.
Same question for you, Jesse Jackson Jr. The legacy of that '84 campaign.
The legacy is Tavis Smiley. The legacy is Jim Zogby. The legacy is Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The legacy is Jonathan Jackson in Congress. The legacy is Sister Bush in Congress. So the legacy is Raphael Warnock in the United States Senate. In a strange kind of way, the legacy from Jesse Jackson's home state, because of his voter registration, is Tim Scott on the Republican side, because that's the broadness of that campaign. And all I can do, Tavis, is tell you that you, too, are part of that legacy. And I hope and pray that you will broadcast live August 18th through the 22nd in Chicago at the Disinherited Conference and allow many of these profound, young, bright, thoughtful peace activists and speakers to go live to L.A., articulate what's going on, and you do it from Chicago at the Disinherited Conference so that we can keep our message out there. We are not going to be sitting at a Democratic convention watching Democratic leadership tell us why the hell they need to bomb the hell out of children and parents and families in Gaza. That ain't happening, man. It's not going to happen in Chicago. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
No, it's going to be quite the convention, and we have been in our offices here trying to figure out our movement for that week. And so I can announce now that we will be in Chicago. This nationally syndicated program, when we started, we were just in L.A. We are now heard across the country, and just a few days from now, I haven't said this publicly, but I will share it now since Jesse Jackson kind of put me on the spot about being in Chicago. We will be there, number one, but we are literally just days away from making another major announcement about a number of new markets that are carrying the Tavis Smiley Show. We're heard right now, of course, in Jesse's hometown of Chicago, WVON. We're in Philadelphia. We're in New Orleans. We're in a bunch of other places already. But we will be announcing in just a few days some major markets that have signed on to carry this program as well. So by the time we get to Chicago, we'll be heard everywhere in this country. And I'm excited about the announcement coming probably next week. We're just crossing some T's and dotting some I's. But when I say major, you can't get much bigger than L.A. But there's one market a little bit bigger than L.A. That I've been excited about getting in. And you can figure that out for yourself. But we're announcing that and some other new markets next week in the national news media. For now, though, we thank Jesse Jackson Jr. and James Zogby, who was a deputy campaign manager 40 years ago. Jesse Jackson Jr., of course, has the honor of carrying that name. And what a grand legacy his mother and father have given this country. I never leave out Miss Jackie in these conversations. What a wonderful family and what a wonderful legacy Jesse Jackson Jr. has inherited as we celebrate the iconic moment that his father ran for president back in 1984. James Zogby, good to have you on, my friend. All the best to you, sir. I'll see you in Chicago this summer, I hope.
Thank you. I'll see you, too.
All right. And Jesse Jackson, Jr., you know I love you, man. There ain't nothing you can do about it. I just love you.
Love you, brother. We're so proud of you, Tavis, and congratulations.
Talk to you soon. Hour 3 of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Ray Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Nearly all of California is under a flood watch after another atmospheric river is off the coast. the state is still saturated from the last powerful storm that swept in off the Pacific and dumped record amounts of rain in the area. The Weather Prediction Center has issued an excessive rain outlook for most of California through Wednesday. Dalton, Illinois Mayor Tiffany Henyard is on the defensive concerning criticism from trustees of thousands of taxpayer dollars spent on trips